We're going to complete our session on the team element of the cycle of business now with one last point. And it's about tying all of this together so we can see how everything fits. Essentially then, what we're going to talk about is choosing your box. Now, what do I mean by that? One of my favourite models is this. It's a situational leadership model. It's in a book from Ken Blanchard called Leadership and the 1 Minute Manager. Now, it's a really powerful model. There are 4 elements to it, and they sit on 2 axes. So we have a level of direction from low to high and a level of support from low to high. Now, if you look at this diagram, the bell curve starts from directing and goes around through coaching into supporting and then down into delegating. Now, obviously, we want to end up in delegating. There's a couple of really important things to consider. First of all, when we talked about systemize the routine, humanize the exception, well, systemizing the routine was 80%. So actually, we're only ever going to be able to get into delegating 80% of the time. Humanize the exception is 20% of the time, and that's supporting. So that's one thing to bear in mind. 80% delegating, 20% supporting. There's something else that's really important here, because you see, for delegation to be able to happen, a system and process needs to be in place. In the absence of a system or process, then we're actually abdicating, which means relying on people to do the task with best intentions and their current level of skill, having not trained them in our process. In such cases then, when we're abdicating, what tends to happen is, as I've alluded to earlier, we find ourselves managing 100% of exceptions. What does that mean? Well, it tends to mean that people are coming to you a lot of the time and you feel like you've got a bungee cord attached to you, because they ask you what to do, you tell them what to do, they go running off to do it, and then they come bouncing back. So directing in the context of no systems in place becomes to tell people what to do and feel like they're constantly attached to you. Conversely, when we start thinking about it in a different context where the systems are in place, directing becomes about show and tell. In other words, teaching the system. So we can teach that system using show and tell because it's now documented, but we want to get out of that directing box as fast as possible. Why do we want to do that? Well, essentially, you see, communication is the response we get. So we can only evaluate whether we've communicated effectively by seeing how other people behave as a result of our communication. People will wander off having been taught the system and start to take action. Now, some of that action will be really good and absolutely on point, and some of it might not achieve the results we want it to. So now's our opportunity to move into the coaching box. And coaching is really about confirmation of understanding. Rather than show and tell, it's about asking questions. And asking questions is examining people's current understanding of the system, finding the gaps and plugging them. So it's still training, but from a slightly different angle. The point to be aware of here is when we're in coaching, then the results are variable and the motivation is variable. If people think they understand the system, they'll wander off and do it, and they'll find that they didn't understand it as well as they thought they did. Hence, motivation variable and results variable. Now, there's a couple of ways we can choose to react in that situation. First of all, we can go back to the time-honoured, well, I knew they wouldn't be able to do it properly, so it'd just be easier if I did it myself. And we go straight back into directing and abandon the whole situational leadership curve. Or we put up with the pain, and there will be some pain short-term, where we realign their expectations and knowledge to go and achieve the right result. Now, this really does come down to choice. So for me, it's about being aware of how that situational leadership curve operates and choosing your box very carefully. Remember, though, that the prerequisite for this is when we want to end up in delegation, we have to have documented processes so that we can actually train people in them. In the absence of that, we're relying on their best intentions and Chinese whispers to interpret what we've taught them properly. So let's lay those solid foundations and then choose our box very carefully. The arrow moves around the curve from directing through coaching into supporting and delegating. Delegate 80%, support 20%. Systemize the routine, humanize the exception. So go and look at how you're getting on at the moment and see what is bouncing back to you, see what's working, see what's not working, and start thinking about directing and coaching in the context of an environment where systems are in place. Remember, when things aren't working as you want them to, the first place to look is to the system, the second place to look is to the training, the third place to look is to the person. So put the system in place, direct, show and tell, coach, confirm understanding and improve understanding, and then delegate and support 80% and 20%. Enjoy the situational leadership curve.